The lights were dazzling, the champagne flutes clinked, and the company's quarterly awards gala was in full swing. I stood in a corner of the ballroom, nursing a half-empty glass. My eyes were fixed on the two people on stage. Up there, Liu Zhang, my former team lead, now a newly minted director, was awkwardly accepting the award for Project of the Year, his gaze flickering nervously toward me. Cynthia Chun, the company's general manager, was delivering a glowing speech. This success was driven by Liu's incredible leadership, but of course we couldn't have done it without the entire team's hard work. As she said that last part, she shot a pointed look in my direction. A cold smile touched my lips. Team, I had practically willed this project into existence, fueled by 3 straight months of all-nighters and takeout coffee. But just before the final presentation, Cynthia had tapped Liu to present it, framing it as a development opportunity. Just like that, all the credit, all the glory became his. I hadn't even been nominated. "Luke, don't let it get to you," a coworker murmured, clapping me on the shoulder. "I hear Leo's got connections upstairs. You know how it is." I didn't answer. I just tilted my head back and drained the rest of the champagne. The liquid was cold and bitter as it slid down my throat. I should have been used to it by now. This past year, my proposals were shot down, my bonuses were mysteriously recalculated, and every promotion I was up for was snatched away by a more suitable candidate. I put up with it. I had to. The mortgage, the car payments, Victoria's tuition for her master's program. I couldn't afford to be impulsive. But tonight, watching Cynthia's phony smile, I felt like a complete and utter fool. After the gala, I turned down my coworkers' invitations to hit another bar and walked alone to the L station. The night wind cut through my suit jacket, and I instinctively pulled it tighter. My phone buzzed. A message from Victoria. "Stuck at the library late. Don't wait up for me. Get some rest." EXO. I stared at the screen, a familiar ache blooming in my chest. She was always like this, sweet, supportive, never complaining. Even when my work made me distant, even when our bank account was perpetually stretched thin, she never once blamed me. But tonight, an urgent question rose in my throat. "Vivi, if I'm just a regular guy in a cubicle for the rest of my life, would you be disappointed?" My thumb hovered over the send button. In the end, I deleted it. I typed back, "Okay, don't work too hard." I couldn't worry her. But the resentment I'd been swallowing for so long was a wildfire now, and it was starting to burn out of control. Back at our apartment, I stood in the entryway of the small but cozy one-bedroom we'd lived in since we got married 3 years ago. I used to dream about getting a promotion, a real raise, and moving us into a bigger place, a place where she wouldn't have to cram onto a packed train every morning. But my salary never seemed to catch up to the city's real estate prices. My dreams kept getting crushed by reality. I took a deep breath, walked into our bedroom, and pulled a file from the bottom drawer of my desk. Market Leap, a proposal for the future of e-commerce. It was a business plan I'd written years ago. After a dozen rejections from venture capitalists, I'd hidden it away and told myself to get real. Tonight, I was done compromising. Victoria came home around 2 in the morning, opening the door so quietly I barely heard her. I was sitting at the dining table, the proposal spread out before me, my brow furrowed. "You're back," I said, my voice flat. "Hey, honey, why are you still up?" she asked softly, her fingers landing gently on my shoulder. "Vivi," I said, looking up at her, "I want to quit." "Quit? What are you talking about? Why so suddenly?" she asked, her voice laced with concern. "They gave my project away again," I said, the words tasting like ash. "The promotion I was counting on went to Liu Zhang, a guy who's been here less than 3 months. I fought to keep my voice steady as I told her what happened. "I'm a joke at that company, Vivi. I thought this project was my one shot at moving up, at finally getting the capital to make Market Leap happen." My voice rose, a raw edge of desperation creeping in. "But it's never going to happen there. They'll never let me succeed." In the warm glow of the lamp, she stood there in that faded knit cardigan, the one I'd promised to replace last month when I got a small bonus, but she just smiled and said, "It still has plenty of life left." Her eyes were wide, her lashes fluttering as if she were startled by my intensity. "I want to start my own company," I pressed on. "The e-commerce platform, the one I told you about." "But," she sat down across from me, "the economy is so shaky right now. A startup is a huge risk. And we have the mortgage, the student loans." I know I cut her off, but I've refined the model. I know this can work. I've already reached out to a few new investors, and if I can just... But finding investors is impossible. The words burst out of her, sharper than she intended. She quickly softened her tone. I mean, you tried before, didn't you? She didn't have to finish. We both remembered. 2 years ago, I'd pitched this plan to anyone who would listen, and the rejections had piled up until we were using her emergency savings to cover rent. It was the lowest point of my life. I could barely look her in the eye when I came home each day. The memory filled me with a fresh wave of guilt. The room fell silent. Outside, a light rain had begun to fall, tapping against the window pane. Victoria got up to get a glass of water. I noticed her hand was trembling. Hot water splashed on her skin, but she didn't seem to feel it. Vivi, I'm fine. She quickly hid her hand behind her back, forcing a smile. I'm just worried about you. Your job might not pay much, but it's stable. If the startup fails... I looked at her, at the redness rimming her eyes, and a wave of exhaustion washed over me. It was always this. Every time I brought up my dream, she countered with stability, reality, the mortgage. I knew she meant well, but still, if all I ever aim for is stable, we'll be stuck in this apartment forever, I said quietly. I don't care where we live. But I do. My voice cracked, louder than I intended. Vivi, I'm 30 years old. I can't spend the rest of my life as some schmuck who gets his work stolen by his boss. The moment the words were out, I regretted them. Her eyes welled up, tears clinging to her lashes, but she stubbornly refused to let them fall. I sighed and reached for her, but she took a step back. Fine, she said, her voice trembling. If you've made up your mind, then do it. I froze. That wasn't what I expected her to say. But she lifted her face, a single tear finally escaping and tracing a path down her cheek. Can you just wait until the end of the quarter? Just 3 months. What if something changes with the project? Her tear felt like a hand squeezing my heart. Vivi, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Do you even believe I could do this? Have you ever? Her pupils contracted, as if pricked by a needle. No, that's not it. Forget it, I said, rubbing my temples. Let's just go to bed. We both have to work in the morning. I walked to the bedroom, not seeing the way she stood frozen in the dining room, biting her lip so hard she drew blood to keep from crying out. Later, lying in bed, I listened to the sound of the shower running. Victoria was in there for a long time. So long, I started to worry. Just as I was about to get up and knock, the water shut off. She crept into the room, smelling of soap and steam, and slid into bed beside me. In the darkness, I felt her fingers tentatively touch my arm before quickly pulling back. Luke, she whispered, I'm not saying I don't believe in you. I'm just scared. I didn't say anything. Just give it 3 more months, okay? If things are still the same then. She paused. I'll support you quitting. I promise. I rolled over. In the sliver of moonlight filtering through the blinds, I could see her swollen eyes. In that moment, my resolve softened. Okay, I said. She let out a breath and curled into my side, her body finally relaxing against mine. But my eyes were wide open, staring at the ceiling. It was 9 p.m., and I was still at my desk, revising a deck for the 3rd time. My phone rang. It was Mark Harris from the marketing department. Luke, man, you still at the office? Yeah. What's up? Emergency. My boss, Lauren, she's out with the client from Singapore. They're ready to sign the deal. Great. So what's the problem? They're flying out first thing tomorrow, so Lauren needs the final contract delivered to their hotel tonight. But my wife just went into labor, Luke. I gotta go. Can you please cover for me? He begged. Lauren said it has to be there by 11, or the whole deal is off. I sighed. I remembered last month when I had a raging fever, and Mark was the one who drove me to the ER in the middle of the night. Fine. Text me the hotel and room number. You're a lifesaver, man. I owe you big time. 20 minutes later, I was at a high-end downtown hotel. The Jade Room is down the hall to your right, the host said with a polite bow. As I neared the end of the corridor, I heard a familiar laugh. I instinctively slowed my pace, my dress, shoes silent on the plush carpet. The door to a private dining room was slightly ajar. I glanced through the crack. Leo, you really outdid yourself this time, a voice said. My blood ran cold. It was Victoria. She was sitting at the head of the table, holding a wine glass. Surrounding her were the company's top brass: Cynthia Chun, the GM, Lauren Lee, the finance director, and Liu Zhang, the newly promoted director of engineering. Why were all the senior executives and the company's legal counsel gathered around Victoria? And why did they look so deferential? Victoria was wearing a champagne-colored dress I'd never seen before, with a diamond necklace that screamed money. And then it hit me. A terrible, sinking feeling. Victoria, I feel terrible about this, Liu Zhang was saying with a sigh. I know we grew up together, but making me take credit for Luke's work like that? It's humiliating. She's right, Vivi, said Lauren Lee. It's been 3 years. Luke gave up a full ride to Stanford for you. He lives on microwave dinners, and you're still holding him down. It's too much. I agree, Vivi, Cynthia Chin added. I know you're the president of the company, but you can't keep targeting Luke like this. Blocking his promotions is one thing, but rejecting his best proposals outright. Their words struck me like lightning. Leo was her childhood friend, and Victoria was the president of my company. What the hell was the last 3 years of struggle and sacrifice about? And my investment pitches, was she the one who killed him? You don't get it, Victoria said, her voice sharp. His e-commerce project is a fantasy. Look at eBay. They've been in the market for years and still can't turn a real profit against Amazon. The infrastructure isn't ready. I was protecting him from getting fleeced. But you can't just crush his spirit like this, Leo argued. As a man, I know how much that validation means. Leo's right. You can't just keep pushing him down. It kills motivation. There has to be some reward, Cynthia reasoned. Fine, Victoria said after a moment. Give him a 10% raise next month. Only 10%? Lauren scoffed. Luke's salary is way below market rate. It should be doubled at least. He makes over 6 figures. It's enough, Victoria said, setting her glass down. I have my reasons. Pressure makes diamonds. The struggles he's facing now are forging the armor he'll need to run Lynn Holdings one day. So, when are you going to tell him the truth? Cynthia asked. Victoria fell silent, a thoughtful expression on her face. Yeah, a guy like Luke is a rare find. You better be careful you don't push him too far, Lauren added. Don't worry. I have it under control, Victoria said, a small smile playing on her lips. I've been saving all his lost bonuses. I'm planning a big surprise for our 3rd anniversary. Now that's more like it, Lauren and Cynthia said in unison. Enough shop talk. A toast. Victoria raised her glass. The room erupted in laughter again. Watching her smile, a white-hot rage rose in my chest. I wanted to storm in there and demand to know why she'd played me for a fool. Just then, my phone buzzed with a text from Mark, asking if I'd made the delivery. Numbly, I walked past their door and down the hall to the correct suite. I don't know how I made it out of that hotel. My entire world had been turned upside down. I found myself walking toward the lakefront, near the planetarium where I'd proposed to Victoria 3 years ago. I don't need a diamond ring or a big wedding, she'd said then, her eyes shining. I just need you. Now I understood. She didn't want the ring and the wedding that poor Luke Collins could afford. My life with Victoria wasn't a love story. It was a one-man puppet show, and I was the puppet. A taxi screeched to a halt inches from me. What the hell, buddy? You got a death wish? The driver yelled, sticking his head out the window. I stared blankly at him, only then realizing I had wandered into the middle of Lakeshore Drive. Ignoring the driver's bewildered expression, I walked over, pulled open the back door, and slid in. Where to, pal? The driver asked, his tone shifting from anger to professional concern. Anywhere, I said, rolling down the window and letting the cold night air rush in. Just drive along the lake. Half an hour later, I was leaning against the railing by the water. The wind coming off Lake Michigan was brutal, sharp as a knife against my face, but I couldn't feel it. My phone was off, but her words echoed in my head. Pressure makes diamonds. The Armor Hill need to run Lynn Holdings. Don't worry, I have it under control. Each phrase was a shard of glass, ripping through my memories, making the last 3 years bleed. I walked aimlessly along the path, my mind replaying scene after scene, everything suddenly clicking into place with sickening clarity. The signs had been there all along. I'd just been too blind to see them. Once on the L, I saw a woman with a designer handbag and said offhandedly, "That looks expensive." Victoria glanced at it. "It is," she'd said casually. "It's a classic. Togo leather. Retails for about 10 grand. I'd been stunned. How do you know that? She just laughed. I worked at a consignment shop one summer. Right? A consignment shop. So she just happened to know the technical term togo leather off the top of her head. And she always had a way of making problems disappear. The landlord who tried to jack up our rent right before we got married, then called the next day to apologize, saying it was a mistake. Victoria had brushed it off as his conscience getting the better of him. More likely, she made one phone call and shut him down. Or just bought the building. Her calm acceptance of my career struggles. Every time I came home complaining about office politics, she'd soothe me. That's just the corporate world. Honey, you just have to be patient. I thought she was afraid I'd do something rash. I never imagined she was the one pulling the strings. I reached an underpass and finally slumped against the concrete wall, my legs giving out. My business plan. Market leap. I remember how excited I was when I first showed it to her. The future is online, Vivi. E-commerce is going to completely change retail. She just shaken her head gently. Honey, the risk is too high. We can't afford to gamble. Later, when I finally got a few VCs interested, they would all back out at the last minute for some vague reason. Mr. Collins, we've reevaluated, and the risk profile is just too high. Luke, it's a great concept, but we feel the market timing isn't quite right. Now I knew. It was her. Every single time, she was the one who killed the deal. I looked up at the skyline, at the towering skyscraper of Lynn Holdings. I'd walked past that building 1,000 times, never once imagining that my wife sat on the top floor. And I, like an idiot, was swallowing my pride at a dead-end job to provide for her. I'd even turned down a full-ride scholarship to Stanford for her. My advisor had practically thrown a fit. Luke, are you insane? Giving up an opportunity like this for a woman? I was so sure of myself back then. I love her, Professor, I'd said. I'm willing to do what it takes. What a joke. She didn't need me to provide for her. She just needed a puppet, an obedient husband she could mold and control. I slowly pushed myself to my feet, brushing the grit off my pants. The lake wind was still biting, but my mind was clearer than it had been in years. The show was over. I pulled out my phone and powered it on. The screen lit up with a barrage of notifications. A dozen missed calls and texts. Vivi. Luke, where are you? Vivi, why aren't you answering your phone? Vivi, I'm so worried. Please call me. I swiped them all away with a cold smile and opened my contacts, dialing a number I hadn't called in a long time. Hey, Chris. I said, my voice steady. That investor dinner you mentioned last month. Is the offer still good? There was a surprise pause on the other end. Luke, you finally came to your senses? Of course it's still good. I'll set it up for tomorrow. Great. I hung up, took one last deep breath of the cold air, and walked back to the street to hail a cab. Take me to the nearest 24-hour print shop. Tonight, I was drafting a divorce petition and a resignation letter. At 8 a.m., I was sitting in the departmental morning meeting. My manager, a hairy man named Greg, was frowning at a spreadsheet. Okay, people, corporate just dropped this on us. They need a full briefing on last quarter's project data delivered to the C-suite on the 36th floor. At 10 a.m., he rubbed his temples. But I have a major client meeting. I can't move. The conference room went silent. The 36th floor was executive territory, a place most of us had never even seen. I slowly raised my hand. I'll do it. I've got nothing scheduled. Great. Greg looked relieved, sliding a folder across the table. You know the data inside and out. Just don't screw it up. The 36th floor. The president's office. The moment the door opened, the air in the room seemed to freeze. Victoria Lynn was standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows, her back to me. She was wearing a sharply tailored black pantsuit, her hair pulled back in a sleek bun, revealing the pale, elegant nape of her neck. Just like at the hotel, she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. Lauren Lee, the finance director, saw me first. The coffee cup she was holding slipped from her fingers and crashed to the floor. Victoria spun around. Her eyes widened, the color draining from her face. Her lips trembled. Luke. I walked in, my face a mask of professional indifference, and placed the file on the massive conference table. Good morning, Ms. Lynn. Greg had a scheduling conflict. I'm here to deliver the briefing in his place. The office was dead silent. The key metrics for last quarter's priority projects are as follows. For the next 20 minutes, I walked them through the data, my voice even and detached, as if I were speaking to a complete stranger. And Victoria, she just stared at me, her breathing growing more ragged with every slide I presented. And in conclusion, our recommended next steps are: I close the folder. That completes my report. If there are no further questions, I'll be returning to my desk. Wait, Luke. Victoria shot to her feet. We need to talk. We've concluded our business for the day, I said, picking up my file and turning toward the door. Her hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. Luke, stay. Lauren Lee awkwardly excused herself and scurried out of the room. I looked down at her fingers, the same fingers that had so gently straightened my tie 1,000 times. The sight of them made my stomach churn. I'm sorry, Miss Lynn. I have other work to attend to. I slowly, deliberately pulled my arm from her grasp and walked out of the office without looking back. Behind me, I heard a dull thud. As the elevator descended, my phone started vibrating nonstop. Vivi, Miss call Vivi, Miss call Vivi. Luke, answer the phone. Please. I silenced the screen and patted the briefcase resting on my lap. Inside were 2 documents. Tonight she was going to watch as I tore down the gilded cage she had so carefully constructed. I got home to the smell of dinner cooking. Honey, you're back. She ran toward me, a practiced smile on her face. I'll just heat up your plate. I sidestepped her, avoiding her touch. Don't bother. Don't be angry. Whatever it is, we can talk about it after we eat. Just give me a minute. It's almost ready. I'm not hungry. Let's just talk now. Victoria froze, her smile faltering. This was not the reaction she was expecting. How long? I asked. Since the day we met? Or just since the wedding? That's not it, Luke. I can explain. Explain what? I threw the Market Leap proposal onto the coffee table. It landed with a heavy smack. Explain how you spent 3 years treating me like a trained monkey? Or how you personally strangled every single opportunity one ever had? I was trying to protect you. Those investors, she stammered, panic flashing in her eyes. Victoria, you make me sick, I said, my voice dangerously low. I want a divorce. I slid the papers across the table. No, I won't sign it, she cried, her eyes wide with disbelief as she looked at the petition. She lunged forward, wrapping her arms around my waist, holding on for dear life. Luke, please just let me explain. I never meant to lie to you. I was afraid. Afraid of what? I pried her hands off me. Afraid I'd find out you were a billionaire? Afraid I was after your money? No, she sobbed, clutching at my sleeve. I was protecting you. The business world is a shark tank. That offer from the firm in Silicon Valley, it could have been corporate espionage. Those VCs wanted to steal your ideas. I let out a cold, harsh laugh. Pressure makes diamonds. The struggles he's facing now are forging the armor he'll need to run Lynn Holdings. Isn't that what you said, Ms. Lynn? And now you're telling me you were scared for me. The blood drained from her face, leaving her chalk white. Protecting me? I paused, or just enjoying the feeling of pulling my strings. I love you, she screamed, a raw, desperate sound. Everything I did was for our future. When the time was right, all of Lynn Holdings was going to be yours. I stood up, a wave of nausea rolling through me. By trampling on my dignity, by rejecting every promotion I ever earned. Victoria, what did you think I was for the last 3 years? A pet you were training? I pushed the divorce papers closer to her. Sign them. The president's game is over. I added, don't worry. I'm not asking for much. Just the back pay for the salary and bonuses I actually earned. No, Luke, don't do this. I can promote you. I'll make you a director, a vice president. I'll give you shares in the company. Whatever you want, I'll give it to you. I looked at her tear-streaked, makeup-smudged face and felt like I was looking at a stranger. The woman who had played the role of the sweet, supportive wife for 3 years had finally dropped the mask, revealing the bone-deep arrogance beneath. She actually thought she could buy me back. Your job titles, your shares, your money. I picked up the duffel bag I'd packed earlier. You can keep them. Luke, she screamed, throwing herself at me again, clinging to my waist. You can't leave. What'll I do if you leave? I pried her hands off me one last time. We're done, Victoria. If you don't sign this, my lawyer will be in touch. And with that, I walked out the door, leaving her sobbing on the floor behind me. In the HR department, I placed my employee ID and resignation letter on the front desk. Luke, The HR specialist, a young woman named Kim, stared at me wide-eyed. What are you? Please process this as soon as possible. I turned and walked toward the elevators, hearing her frantic voice behind me. Lauren, it's Kim. Luke Collins is here. He just handed me his resignation letter. Just as the elevator doors were about to close, a hand shot out and stopped them. Luke, Lauren Lee, the finance director, squeezed in, out of breath. Calm down. Victoria, I pressed the door open button. Are you suggesting I take the stairs, Lauren? Her face flushed. She sighed. The president wants to see you. When I walked into the president's office, I stopped short. The entire executive team was there. Liu Zhang was standing in a corner, unable to meet my eyes. And Victoria, dressed in a custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than my last car, sat behind her massive desk. Luke, you're here, she said, her voice unsteady. After a discussion with the board, we've decided to appoint you as executive vice president, in charge of the new retail division. A ripple of shock went through the room. Murmurs and gasps broke the silence. The title came with a 7-figure salary and stock options. Victoria stood up, forcing the familiar, gentle smile I once loved. Your e-commerce concept is incredibly forward-thinking. The company is prepared to put its full weight behind it. Ms. Lin, I cut her off. I've already submitted my resignation. Her smile froze. $20 million a year, she blurted out, her voice rising. And 5% of the company invested stock. The collective gasp in the room was audible. A couple of the junior assistants looked like their eyes were about to pop out of their heads. I glanced out the window. From 36 floors up, you could see the entire downtown core. 3 months ago, I was in a cubicle downstairs, slaving over a PowerPoint. Now this woman was offering me the keys to the kingdom. The irony was suffocating. Oh, she said, pulling a velvet box from her desk drawer. And this is a gift for you. The box snapped open to reveal a watch. A Patek Philippe. I'd seen it in a magazine once. It cost more than our apartment. I was going to wait for our anniversary. Her voice trailed off as I started to laugh. Victoria, I took off my employee ID and placed it on her desk. After everything, you still think this is about money? She lunged across the desk and grabbed my wrist, sending the watch box tumbling to the floor. Then what is it? Tell me what you want. What I want, I said, looking her dead in the eye, is something you can never give me. As I turned to leave, the crowd of executives parted from me like the Red Sea. Lauren tried to stop me, but Leo held her back. From behind me came Victoria's voice, a raw, ragged scream. Without the resources of Lin Holdings, your pathetic little project won't survive 3 months. Outside the revolving doors of the lobby, the sun was bright. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number I'd saved 3 days ago. Mr. Chun, this is Luke Collins. About that investment in Market Leap. Are you free to talk details? It was 11 p.m. In the garage, I'd converted into a makeshift office. A single desk lamp cut through the darkness. My fingers flew across the keyboard, mapping out the initial architecture for Market Leap. Suddenly, my phone vibrated, skittering across the desk. The screen lit up. Victoria Lin. I glanced at it, pressed the power button to silence it, and went back to work, letting it go to voicemail. A minute later, it lit up again. Victoria Lin. I snatched the phone, swiped, and blocked the number. Immediately, a new notification pinged. A text message. Then another, and another. Luke, please pick up the phone. I know you're seeing these. Just text me back. Please. I was wrong. I'm so sorry. Just let me see you. One time, my face was a stone mask. I silenced the phone completely and placed it face down on the desk. At 7 the next morning, I pushed open the heavy garage door, holding 2 cups of coffee. One for me, one for Kevin, the programmer who'd pulled an all-nighter with me. I took one step outside and froze. A black Bentley was parked at the end of the alley. The window was half down, revealing Victoria's pale, drawn face. She clearly hadn't slept. Her makeup was smeared. Her hair was a mess, and her eyes were red and swollen. I looked for a single, cold second, then turned and started walking in the opposite direction. Luke, the car door flew open. She stumbled out on her high heels and ran after me, grabbing my arm. Please, just let me say one thing. Her voice was a raw, broken rasp. I'm so sorry. I know what I did was unforgivable. I shouldn't have lied to you. I shouldn't have treated you like that. I stopped walking, but didn't turn around. Give me a chance to make it up to you, she pleaded, her voice trembling. Just one chance. Please. I slowly pulled my arm from her grasp. My voice was ice. Ms. Lynn, please have some self-respect. I walked away, her shattered sob echoing in the alley behind me. Luke, what do you want from me? I didn't answer. I didn't look back. At 3 p.m., I was sitting in a coffee shop. When Lauren had asked to meet, I knew what it was about. She's lost 15 pounds, Lauren said, stirring her latte. She just sits in her car outside your old apartment building all day. I put my cup down. If this isn't about the divorce settlement, there's nothing to talk about. Luke, she reached for my hand. Victoria, she's really. Lauren, I said, gently pulling my hand away. Do you know why she lost? I looked out the window at the autumn leaves spiraling to the ground, my mind flashing back to that night in the hotel. Because she will always believe that if she just offers enough compensation, it will erase the hurt she caused. I walked out of the coffee shop. My phone buzzed. A text from Chloe Shun. Algorithm test was a success. Want me to grab you dinner? I glanced in the distance at the Lynn Holdings Tower. The building I used to look up at with a mix of awe and resentment now seemed so small. Yeah, usual spot, I texted back, sliding the phone into my pocket. In the reflection of the coffee shop window, I could see Lauren's slumped shoulders. She was holding her phone to her ear, shaking her head, her lips forming the words, "He won't agree." I turned and walked toward the subway station. For the first time in a long time, the city felt full of promise. I stood outside the glass doors of the venture capital firm, rain dripping from my collar down my back, cold and sharp. This was the 17th time. The 17th time I'd heard the same polished rejection. Mr. Collins, your project is fascinating, but we feel the domestic market just isn't mature enough for this model. I closed my proposal folder, looked at the investor's shifty eyes, and gave a small, humorless smile. This wouldn't have anything to do with a phone call from Lynn Holdings, would it? A muscle twitched in the man's jaw before his professional mask slipped back into place. I'm not sure what I mean. The rain was a downpour by the time I got outside. I stood under an awning, took out a small notebook, and drew a line through the last name on my list of VCs. A complete wipeout. Victoria's influence ran deeper than I'd ever imagined. Later that night, back in the garage office. Luke, maybe we scaled back the initial launch. Kevin asked, handing me a cup of instant coffee. I shook my head. We can't. The second we compromised, Market Leap would become just another mediocre platform, destined to be crushed by the giants. I picked up my phone, scrolling through my contacts until my thumb stopped on a name. Big Mike, my old college roommate. He ran a construction supply business now. The phone connected, and his booming voice nearly blew out my eardrum. Luke Collins, to what do I owe the honor? I took a deep breath. Mike, I'm starting a company. I need seed money. The line was silent for a few seconds. Is this that Lynn Holdings thing? No, this is mine, I said, my voice firm. It's called Market Leap. Another pause. Done, Mike said, his voice decisive. I'm in for 50 grand. I'll wire it tomorrow. I was stunned. You don't even want to hear the details? Mike laughed. Dude, I remember that campus trading website you built freshman year. I've known you were onto something since then. My hand was shaking when I hung up the phone. Over the next 2 weeks, I called in every favor I had. My old coworker, Mark, who'd just been laid off, gave me his entire severance. I believe in you, man. The owner of the print shop downstairs cashed out a fund he'd been saving for his son's college. Luke, I've seen you in here at all hours, drawing up plans. You're not a man who wastes time. My old university advisor diverted some of his research grant money. Luke, this is the last time I'm betting on your gut. The checks were small, but together, they were just enough to incorporate the company and build a minimum viable product. The night we signed the last investment agreement, 16 of us crammed into the garage, raising disposable plastic cups. To Market Leap, Big Mike roared, and to sticking it to the VCs who were too blind to see it. Amid the cheers, I looked at the faces around me, some young and hopeful, some older and weathered. My throat tightened. They weren't just betting their money, they were betting on me. I found out later that in the top floor office of Lynn Holdings, Victoria smashed an antique vase against the wall that night. He'd rather take charity from those nobodies than accept my help. Her scream, they said, could be heard all the way down the hall. In our dingy garage, a hand-painted sign now hung by the door. Market Leap, Inc. I took a picture of it and sent it to my 16 investors. The caption was only 3 words. I won't fail you. I stood in the corner of the convention hall, clutching a cup of lukewarm coffee, watching a sea of suits glad-handing each other. I hadn't wanted to come to this tech incubator event. Market Leap was still a skeleton crew with a half-built website. But Big Mike had insisted. Go fishing, man. You never know what you might catch. Luke, a bright, familiar voice came from behind me. I turned to see a pair of sparkling eyes. It really is you. Chloe Shun, dressed in a sharp navy blazer, her hair pulled back, beamed at me. I thought I was seeing things. It took me a second to place her. Chloe, a computer science major from my university, a couple of years behind me. Last I heard, she'd moved to California after graduation. Chloe, I said, suddenly conscious of my frayed cuffs. Wow, long time no see. Her eyes scanned me from head to toe, and a knowing smile played on her lips. I heard you left Lynn Holdings. Good for you. We found a quiet table in the back. As I laid out the vision for Market Leap, Chloe's eyes grew wider and brighter. So you're building the Amazon of China, but better, she said, pulling out a tablet. Walk me through the tech stack. For the next 30 minutes, I sketched out diagrams on a napkin. She peppered me with questions, each one sharper than the last. Server load balancing, payment system risk models, logistics algorithms. Wait a minute, I said, stopping mid-sentence. Weren't you an art history major? She gave me a sly wink. Pivoted. I run my family's VC arm in Silicon Valley now. It turned out her father was Stephen Shun, a legendary angel investor who had backed 3 different unicorn startups. Luke, she said, her expression turning serious. This project of yours is 100 times more visionary than Victoria Lynn's crumbling retail empire. My hand tightened around my coffee cup. Don't look so surprised, she said with a light laugh. Everyone in the valley knows the story. The heiress who tried to play puppet master and got burned. When the event ended, Chloe handed me a gold embossed business card. Tomorrow, 3 p.m., Shin Capital's downtown office. She winked. My dad wants to video conference with you. He's intrigued. If it goes well, he might fly you out to headquarters. I stared at the gleaming logo on the card. Chloe, what about Lynn Holdings? Don't worry about it, she said, clapping me on the shoulder. If there's one thing my father hates, it's other people trying to influence his investments. As she was leaving, she turned back. By the way, that logistics algorithm. She pulled a thin file from her briefcase. This is Amazon's patent portfolio from last year. Might give you some ideas. I opened it. My heart started hammering against my ribs. It was an internal technical overview. Chloe, this is, let's just call it, she said, tilting her head, repayment for you fixing my laptop back in sophomore year. That night, on the top floor of the Lynn Holdings Tower, Lauren Lee burst into the president's office. Victoria, I just got a call. Luke met with Stephen Shun's daughter today. The fountain pen in Victoria's hand snapped in two. Shin Capital? The firm that's been beating us in the valley for the last 5 years. Yes, Lauren said, hesitating. And it looks like Chloe Shun is very, very interested in Market Leap. Victoria shot to her feet, shoving her leather chair back so hard it slammed into the glass wall behind her with a sickening thud. Victoria burst into my garage office without knocking. The door flew open so hard it hit the wall. I was at my desk, sorting through travel documents for my flight to California. I looked up. She was standing in the doorway, her chest heaving, a check clutched in her hand. Luke, she said, her voice shaking. You're going to California? I closed the folder on my desk without a word. She strode over and slapped the check down in front of me. $50 million. The official stamp of Lynn Holdings was pressed into the corner. I'm investing, she said, her eyes boring into mine. You don't have to go to them. We'll build it here. I swear, I can have Market Leap online in 3 months. I didn't touch the check. I just asked her a simple question. Do you actually believe this project can succeed? She froze. You've never even read the business plan, I said with a sad smile. You're not investing because you see its value. You're investing because you want to keep me here. Her fingers began to tremble. I can learn. Victoria, I cut her off. You never even wanted to try. The check on the table was a glaring symbol of everything she represented. A solution born of power and money, not belief. She found me again at the airport, right before security. This time, there was no makeup, no expensive suit. Just a wrinkled trench coat, her hair a mess, her eyes puffy and raw. "Luke," she said, catching her breath as she blocked my path. She held out a file. "The divorce papers." I signed them. "The apartment, the savings. It's all yours." I took the folder. "Thank you. You didn't have to bring them here yourself." "Yes, I did," she said, tears welling in her eyes. "I needed to see you one last time. And this," she said, pulling a flash drive from her pocket. "It's 6 years of our supply chain data. All our vendor contacts. It will help you." I looked at her tear-streaked face and felt a wave of profound absurdity. The very person who had done everything in her power to stop me was now handing me her company's biggest secrets. "Victoria," I said, my voice softening for the first time, "take care of yourself." She grabbed my wrist, her tears splashing onto my sleeve. If you can ever find a way to forgive me." She choked out, "Just one phone call. I don't care where you are in the world. I'll be on the next flight." I gently pulled my hand free and turned toward the security line. Her broken sobs followed me until I was out of sight. On the plane, Chloe leaned over from the adjacent seat. "Why didn't you tell her you were just going for a meeting?" I stared out the window at the endless sea of clouds. "What would be the point?" "The point?" She raised an eyebrow. You didn't see her face." The woman was gutted. I closed my eyes, leaning my head back against the seat. She wasn't crying because I was leaving. She was crying because she'd finally lost control. The Shun Capital conference room was simpler than I'd expected. No gaudy crystal chandeliers like at Lynn Holdings, no marble floors polished to a mirror shine. Just an entire wall of glass, letting the California sun pour in. I stood by the window, watching the cars crawl along the freeway below like ants, my fingers tracing the edge of the flash drive in my pocket. It held our beta test data and the operational reports my 16 investors had helped me pull together. Nervous, Chloe appeared beside me with a cup of black coffee. "A little," I admitted, taking the cup. "Your father. He hates 2 things," she said, holding up 2 fingers. "Flashy PowerPoints with no substance, and people who aren't honest with their data." I nodded and took a sip. The bitter taste was exactly what I needed. When the door opened, I stood up instinctively. Stephen Shun was leaner than his photos, with meticulously trimmed, graying temples. He walked with the brisk, efficient pace of a Silicon Valley veteran. "Mr. Collins," he said, his handshake firm, "my daughter tells me you have a project that could upend the entire retail landscape in China." No small talk. Straight to business. I like that. I opened my laptop. "Mr. Shun, this is Market Leap's performance data from the last 3 months of testing." For the next 45 minutes, I laid it all out. The tech architecture, the user growth, the logistics model, and even a breakdown of the fatal flaws in Lynn Holdings' current business. Stephen Shun didn't interrupt once, just jotted down occasional notes. When I got to the fraud detection algorithm for our payment system, he finally looked up. "Have you validated this model?" "We have," I said, pulling up another screen. In our beta test, our fraudulent transaction identification was 37% more accurate than the current industry average. Stephen Shun's eyebrows rose almost imperceptibly. When I finished, he actually smiled. He stood and offered his hand. "Mr. Collins, your vision is ambitious, but it's not a fantasy." I was floored. "Your plan is solid. Your team is small, but they're fighters." He glanced at Chloe. "My daughter's instincts are usually right." He looked back at me. "Do you know how Shun Capital, a Chinese-American firm, survived in the Valley?" He answered his own question. "We only invest in one kind of person, someone who knows exactly what they want and has the skills to get it. You're that kind of person. $20 million. Series A. Is that enough?" My ears were ringing. It wasn't until Chloe kicked me under the table that I found my voice. "Yes," I said, shaking his hand. "Thank you for your trust." Victoria's apartment was dark. The only light came from the tablet in her lap. The headline from financial news site seemed to mock her. Upstart e-commerce platform, Market Leap secures $20 million series of funding from Shun Capital. Founder Luke Collins emerges as a new industry heavyweight. The accompanying photo showed Luke in a sharp blue suit she'd never seen, a confident, triumphant smile on his face as he shook hands with Stephen Shun. And standing beside him, her hand resting naturally on his arm, was Chloe Shun, her smile as bright and blinding as the California sun. Victoria's fingers tightened on the tablet, her nails scraping against the screen. She numbly scrolled to the next article. The rise of Luke Collins, from delusional dreamer to e-commerce disruptor. A paragraph in the middle of the article was highlighted. Sources close to the matter report that Collins repeatedly sought domestic funding, to no avail. It is rumored that certain legacy retail giants applied behind-the-scenes pressure, causing several venture capital firms to withdraw their interest at the last minute. Victoria's breath caught in her throat. She remembered the day Luke had come home, ecstatic, telling her a VC firm was finally interested. She'd been dismissive. There are a lot of scammers out there. Honey, be careful. The next day, the firm had pulled its offer. The way the light had died in Luke's eyes that day was a stark, brutal contrast to the fire in them now, standing next to Chloe Shun. The tablet's algorithm pushed a video to her screen, an interview with Chloe. We're betting on Market Leap, not just for its business model, but for Luke himself, the girl in the video said, her confidence radiating from a screen. He is one of the most resilient founders I've ever met. When almost everyone told him he was wrong, he refused to give up. Victoria slammed the tablet face down on the couch. She suddenly remembered 3 years ago when Luke had first passionately described his vision of how online shopping would change everything. How had she responded? You're dreaming. The logistics infrastructure can't support it, and the payment systems aren't secure enough. And now, he was standing in a place she could never reach, making that very dream a reality. A single tear hit the expensive leather of the sofa, leaving a dark spot. Then another and another. She bit her lip, refusing to make a sound. Outside, the city lights sparkled. But here, at the top of the empire she had built, Victoria Lynn felt a cold she had never known. A shot of the garage, 3 months ago, cluttered with junk. Now, the only thing left on the wall is a faded, hand-painted sign. Market Leap, Inc. It's being carefully taken down and placed in a wooden box. A sleek, modern office in a glass skyscraper. A brand new logo gleams on the wall. The 16 original investors are posing for a photo at the reception desk. I'm standing in the center, holding the box with the old sign. Big Mike grins. Well, Luke, I'd say this is a hell of an upgrade. Amid the laughter, I look out the window and see the Lynn Holdings Tower in the distance. The open-plan office is a hive of activity. Phones ring, keyboards clatter, and teams argue passionately over whiteboards. We just broke 1 million registered users. The Dallas Fulfillment Center is operational 3 days ahead of schedule. Another major brand is begging to get on the platform. A data wall shows graphs climbing vertically. User acquisition, gross merchandise volume, repeat purchase rate. Chloe walks over with a stack of files, placing a coffee on my desk. You need a real office, you know. It's a bad look for the CEO to be camping out in a cubicle. I shake my head. Out here, I can hear what's really going on. A TV in the break room is tuned to a business channel. Market Leap's Cyber Monday debut is a massive success, clearing over $100 million in single-day sales. Disruptor Luke Collins, from being rejected by capital to rewriting the rules of e-commerce. The Shin family's bet pays off as Market Leap's valuation skyrockets tenfold in 6 months. Market Leap's new service, LeapPay, is revolutionizing how merchants and customers interact. The shot changes to an interview with me. Some have said your success is the ultimate revenge against those who doubted you. How do you respond to that? The host asks. I smile. Business isn't about revenge. It's about creating value. Cut to the Lynn Holdings boardroom. The same news report is playing on a giant screen. The shareholders look grim. Our online division is down 40% year over year. Our distributors are demanding we lower our prices to compete. Victoria, didn't you say this project was a fantasy? Victoria sits at the head of the table, staring at the image of me on the screen, her face a mask of silent, agonizing regret. I erased a number on the whiteboard and wrote a new formula. If we implement this algorithm, we can cut logistics time by another 12%. But it'll increase costs by 20%. Chloe shot back instantly. She grabbed a marker and drew a curve next to my equation. See? The marginal utility starts to plummet right here. Everyone else in the room held their breath. It was the 3rd time today Chloe and I had gone head-to-head over a technical plan. We compromise, I said, reaching out and tapping a spot on her curve. We cut time by 10%, but costs only go up by 8%. Chloe's eyes lit up. Deal. As she slapped my hand in agreement, I noticed a small smudge of blue ink on her ring finger, like a tiny, accidental ring. It was to M. The office was empty except for me and Chloe. She was tweaking a presentation for the next day when she spun her laptop toward me. There's something wrong with this pivot table. I leaned in closer, my temples throbbing. After 18 straight hours of work, my vision was starting to blur. Mr. Collins, she said, her tone suddenly formal. She handed me a steaming mug of coffee. The strategy is sound. Don't burn yourself out. A sticky note was attached to the mug. 3 sugars, no cream. Don't ask how I know. I looked up and met her smiling eyes. Just Luke is fine, I said quietly. And thank you, Chloe, for everything. The city lights outside the window seemed to draw closer, close enough that I could see my own reflection in her eyes. While Chloe stepped out to take a call, my phone screen lit up. A text from a number I didn't have saved, but knew instantly. Victoria, I heard you're trying to acquire Flash Logistics. Victoria, their financials are cooked. I had my team pull the real data. Victoria, attachment, analysis. PDF. I didn't open it. When I looked up, Chloe was leaning against the glass doorway, watching me, spinning a pen between her fingers. A late-night message from the ex-wife. An old trick from corporate spy, I said, turning off my phone. It's how she used to kill my deals 3 years ago. Chloe walked over and, to my surprise, gently ruffled my hair. So, does it still hurt? Her touch was warm, like a small pocket of sunshine. As I walked her to the elevator, she pressed the down button. Board meeting tomorrow at 9, she said. And for God's sake, wear a different tie. That blue-striped one is hideous. I looked down at my tie. It was a gift from her after our Cyber Monday success party. The elevator doors slid shut, but not before she gave me a quick wink. When I got back to my desk, I found a bottle of antacids next to my keyboard. A note was tucked underneath. Don't try to be Steve Jobs. You have to be alive to change the world. I scanned the meeting agenda, my finger pausing on one item. Partnership negotiation with Lynn Holdings. My assistant, Kevin, knocked and poked his head in. Luke, they're here. Conference room 1. Got it. I closed the folder and glanced at my reflection. Dark gray suit, the tie Chloe picked out last week. Even the cufflinks were a gift from her. I took a deep breath and pushed open the door. Victoria was sitting across the long table. She was wearing a severe charcoal gray suit I'd never seen. Her lipstick a slash of defiant red. Mr. Collins, she said, standing. Her voice was tight. Thank you for giving us this opportunity. Ms. Lynn, I replied with a polite, impersonal smile. Please have a seat. To my right, Chloe opened her notebook, the tip of her pen tapping the paper once. The negotiation began. Data, clauses, revenue sharing. But Victoria seemed distracted. At one point, she cut me off mid-sentence. Do you remember that first trip we took to the mountains? The little cafe with the Ms. Lynn, Chloe interjected smoothly, her own smile unwavering. Do you have an issue with the logistics timeline outlined in Chapter 3, Section 7? Victoria's eyes narrowed for a fraction of a second. No, she said stiffly. She turned back to me. Luke, the real reason I'm here is to. Regarding the exclusivity clause for brand onboarding, I said, flipping to the next page, will require a minimum of 6 months of sole partnership. Her knuckles went white as she gripped her pen. When it was time to sign, Victoria's hand was shaking. A pleasure doing business with you, I said, standing up, but I didn't offer my hand. As the others filed out of the room, she stopped me. Luke, can we talk? Alone? Just for 5 minutes. I glanced at Chloe. She gave me an almost imperceptible nod and quietly exited, closing the door behind her. Ms. Lynn, I said, taking a half step back to create distance. It was a pleasure. Our business development team will handle the follow-up. Thank you, Luke. She suddenly rushed forward and hugged me. Thank you for giving me this chance. I know. No, Ms. Lynn, I interrupted, gently but firmly pulling her away. We're partnering with you because your company's infrastructure is superior to the competition's. It's a business decision. I don't believe you, she said with a bitter smile. Why else would the terms be so favorable to us? Because we believe in mutually beneficial partnerships, I said, my voice even. The terms we offer all our major partners are similarly structured. Victoria stared at me, the fight draining out of her. Tears began to stream down her face. Luke, is there any chance for us? She whispered, her voice breaking. I sighed. Look forward, Vivi. I understand now, in a way, why you did what you did. But we're over. You deserve a better life, not one defined by a relationship drama. Victoria's composure finally shattered. She seemed dazed, lost in her own grief. Can I have one last hug? She asked, her voice choked with sobs. I hesitated for a long moment, then slowly opened my arms. She threw herself against me, holding on with a desperate strength. Luke, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, she cried, the words tumbling out in a torrent of long-suppressed emotion. I was wrong. I was so wrong. For a moment, as she cried, I saw the girl I'd first fallen in love with. I froze, then slowly, I placed my hand on her shoulder. Forget about me, Vivi, I said softly, patting her back. There's so much more to life. No, 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 she sobbed, shaking her head against my chest. I stood there silently, holding her as she cried, the clock on the wall ticking away the minutes. It felt like time was rewinding, pulling us back to a life that no longer existed. Finally, she pulled away. Thank you, she whispered. She gave me one last look, then turned and walked out of the room. 3 years later, we merged Market Leap, LeapPay, and Leapfrog Logistics into a single entity, the 40th Street Group. It became one of the country's biggest privately held companies. Soon after, we went public on the NASDAQ.